South of the border, west of the sun. Chapter 3. Izumi and I went out together for more than a year. We went out once a week to a film, or we studied together at the library, or we just went for long, aimless walks. As far as sex goes, though, we never made it all the way. About twice a month, she came over to my house when my parents were out, and we held each other on my bed. But she never took all her clothes off. You never know when someone might come back, she insisted. Overly cautious, you could call her. She wasn't scared. She just hated to be pushed into a potentially embarrassing situation. So I always had to hold her with her clothes on and fumble around as best I could beneath her underwear. "Slow down," she told me whenever my disappointment showed. "I need more time, please." Actually, I wasn't in that much of a rush myself. I was just confused and disappointed by all sorts of things. Of course, I liked her and was grateful that she was my girlfriend. If she hadn't been with me, my teenage years would have been stale and colourless. She was basically an honest, pleasant girl, someone people liked. But our interests were worlds apart. She couldn't understand the books I read or the music I listened to, so we couldn't talk as equals about them. In this sense, my relationship with her differed dramatically from that with Shimamoto. But when I sat beside her and touched her fingers, a natural warmth welled up inside me. I could tell her anything. I loved kissing her eyelids and just above her lips. I also liked to push her hair up and kiss her tiny ears, which invariably sent her into fits of giggles. Even now, whenever I think of her, I picture a quiet Sunday morning, a gentle, clear day, just getting underway, no homework to do, just a Sunday when you could do what you wanted. She always gave me this lie back and relax Sunday morning kind of feeling. Of course, she had her faults. She was pretty hard-headed and could have done with a bit more in the imagination department. She wasn't about to take even one step outside the comfortable world she had been brought up in. She never got so involved in something that she totally forgot about eating and sleeping. And she loved and respected her parents. The opinions she did put forth, the standard opinions of a 16, 17-year-old girl, were not surprisingly insipid. On the plus side, I never once heard her badmouth another person, and she never bored me with conceited talk. She liked me and was good to me. She listened carefully to what I had to say and cheered me up. I talked a lot about myself and my future, what I wanted to become, the kind of person I hoped to be, a young boy's narcissistic fairy tales. But she listened intently. "I know you'll be a wonderful person when you grow up. There's something special about you," Izumi told me. And she was serious. No one had ever told me that before. And holding her, even with her clothes on, was fantastic. What confused and disappointed me, though, was that I could never discover within her something special that existed just for me. A list of her good qualities far outstripped a list of her faults, and certainly far outshone my own. Yet there was something missing, something which was vital. If only I'd be able to pin down what that was, I know we would have ended up sleeping together. I wouldn't have held back forever. Even if it had taken a long time, I would have persuaded her that it was absolutely necessary for her to sleep with me. But I lacked the confidence to see this through. I was just a rash 17-year-old whose head was crammed full of lust and curiosity. But in that head of mine, I still knew that if she didn't want to have sex, I shouldn't try to force the issue. I had to wait patiently for the right time. I did, though, hold Izumi naked in my arms once. I can't stand holding you with your clothes on, I pleaded. If you don't want to have sex, that's okay. But I want to see your body. I want to hold you with nothing on. I have to. I can't bear it any longer. Izumi thought for a while, then said that, if it was what I wanted, she didn't mind. But promise me okay. She looked at me seriously. That's all you'll do? Don't do anything I don't want to. She came over to my house on a beautiful, clear Sunday at the beginning of November. A bit chilly though. My parents had to go to a memorial service for someone on my father's side of the family, and I should really have gone with them. I told them I had to study for a test and stayed at home alone. They weren't due back until that night. Izumi came over in the afternoon. We held each other in my bed, and I took her clothes off. She closed her eyes and let me undress her. It wasn't easy. I'm all thumbs to begin with, and girls' clothes are a pain. Halfway through, Izumi opened her eyes and took over. She had on light blue knickers and a matching bra. She had probably bought those specially for the occasion. Up till then, her underwear was always the kind mothers bought their high school-aged girls. Finally, I undressed myself. I held her naked body and kissed her neck and breasts. I stroked her smooth skin and breathed in its fragrance. Holding each other, naked like this, was out of this world. I felt if I didn't go inside her, I'd go insane. But she pushed me firmly away. I'm sorry, she said. Instead, she took my penis in her mouth and licked it all over. She'd never done that before. Over and over she drew her tongue over the tip of my penis until I couldn't think straight, and I came. Afterwards, I held her close, caressing every inch of her body. Bathed in the autumn light, her body was beautiful, and I kissed her all over. It was truly a gorgeous afternoon. We held each other tight many times, and I came again and again. Each time I came, she went to the bathroom to rinse her mouth. What a weird sensation, she laughed. I had been going out with Izumi for just over a year, but that was, without a doubt, the happiest time we ever spent together. Naked, we had nothing to hide. I felt I knew more about her then than ever before, and she must have felt the same. What we needed were not words and promises, but the steady accumulation of small realities. Izumi lay still for a long while, her head nestled on my chest, as if she were listening to my heartbeat. I stroked her hair. I was 17, healthy, on the verge of becoming an adult. Wonderful is the only word for it. At around 4, just as she was getting dressed to leave, the doorbell rang. At first, I just ignored it. I had no idea who it was. If I didn't answer, whoever it was would surely give up and go away. But the doorbell rang on insistently. Damn, I thought. Are your parents back? Izumi asked, blanching. She was out of bed, hurriedly gathering up her clothes. Don't worry, they can't be home this early. They have a key so they wouldn't ring the bell. My shoes, she said. Shoes? My shoes are just inside the front door. I threw on my clothes, rushed downstairs, and tossed her shoes inside the hall cupboard. When I opened the door, my aunt was standing there. My mother's youngest sister, who lived about an hour's train ride away and visited us every so often. What on earth were you doing? I've been ringing the bell forever, she said. I was listening to music with headphones on, so I didn't hear you, I replied. Parents are out. They went to a memorial service. They won't be back till late tonight. I suppose you know that, though. They told me. I had something to do in the neighborhood, and I knew you were at home studying, so I thought I'd cook supper for you. I've already shopped. I can make supper for myself. I'm not a child, you know, I said. But I've bought everything, and you're busy, aren't you? I'll make supper while you study. Oh God, I thought. I wanted to curl up and die. Now how was Izumi going to get home? In my house, you had to go through the living room to get to the front door, then past the kitchen window to get to the gate. Of course, I could introduce Izumi as a friend who came over to see me, but I was supposed to be studying hard for an exam. If it came out that I had a girl round, there'd be hell to pay. I couldn't very well ask my aunt to keep it a secret from my parents. My aunt wasn't a bad person, but keeping secrets was not one of her strong points. While my aunt was in the kitchen, getting her shopping out of the bags, I took Izumi's shoes upstairs. She was fully dressed. I explained the situation. She turned pale. What on earth am I supposed to do? What if I can't get out of here? I know I have to be home every night by dinner time. If I'm not, I'll be in big trouble. Don't worry, it'll be okay. We'll figure something out, I said, trying to calm her down. But in fact, I was just as clueless about the next step. And I can't find one of my suspenders. I've looked everywhere. Your suspender? I asked. A little metal thing, about this big. I scoured the room from the floor to the top of my bed, but I couldn't find it. Sorry, couldn't you leave your stockings off just this once? I asked. I went into the kitchen where my aunt was chopping vegetables. We need some vegetable oil, she said, and asked me to go out and buy some. I couldn't refuse, so I rode my bike over to a nearby shop. It was already growing dark outside. At this rate, Izumi might be stuck in my house forever. I had to do something before my parents got home. I think our only chance is for you to slip out while my aunt is in the loo, I told Izumi. Do you think it'll work? Let's give it a shot. We can't sit around like this, twiddling our thumbs. I'd wait downstairs till my aunt went to the loo, then clap my hands twice loudly. Izumi would come downstairs, put on her shoes, and leave. If she made her escape all right, she would call me from a nearby payphone. My aunt sang happily as she sliced vegetables, made miso soup, and fried up some eggs. But no matter how much time passed, she didn't go to the loo. For all I knew, she might be listed in the Guinness Book of Records for world's biggest bladder. I was about to give up when she took off her apron and left the kitchen. As soon as I saw she was in the loo, I raced to the living room and clapped twice, hard. Izumi tiptoed downstairs, shoes in hand, quickly slipped them on, and, as quietly as she could, crept out of the front door. I went into the kitchen to make sure she got out of the front gate. A second later, my aunt came out of the bathroom. I breathed a sigh of relief. 5 minutes afterwards, Izumi called me, telling my aunt I'd be back in 15 minutes. I went out. Izumi was standing in front of the payphone. "I hate this," she said before I could get out a word. "I don't ever want to do this again." I couldn't blame her for being angry and upset. I led her to the park near the station and sat her down on a bench. I gently held her hand. Over her red sweater, she had on a beige coat. I recalled fondly what lay beneath. But today was beautiful. I mean, until my aunt showed up. Don't you think so? I asked. Of course, I enjoyed it. Every time with you, I have a wonderful time. But every time afterwards, I get confused. About what? The future. After I leave high school, you'll go to university in Tokyo and I'll stay here. What's going to happen to us? I'd already decided to go to college in Tokyo after I left high school. I was dying to get out of my hometown, to live on my own, away from my parents. My overall performance wasn't that great, but in the subjects I did like, I got pretty good marks without opening a book, so getting into a private college would be no big deal, since their exams cover only a couple of subjects. But there was no way Izumi would be joining me in Tokyo. Her parents wanted to keep her close at hand, and she wasn't the rebellious type. So she wanted me to stay put. We have a good college here, she argued. Why do you have to go all the way to Tokyo? If I had promised not to leave, I'm sure she would have slept with me. Come on, I said. It's not as if I'm going off to a foreign country. It's only 3 hours away, and college vacations are long, so for 3 or 4 months of the year, I'll be here. I'd explained it to her a dozen times. But if you leave here, you'll forget all about me, and you'll find another girlfriend, she said. I'd heard these lines at least a dozen times too. I told her that wouldn't happen. I like you a lot, I said, so how can I forget you that easily? But I wasn't so sure. A simple change of scenery can bring about powerful shifts in the flow of time and emotions. Exactly what had happened to Shimamoto and me. We might have been very close, but moving down the road a couple of miles was all it took for us to go our separate ways. I liked her a lot, and she told me to come and see her, but in the end, I stopped going. There's one thing I just can't understand, Izumi said. You say you like me, you say you want to take care of me, but sometimes I can't figure out what's going on inside your head. Izumi took a handkerchief from her coat pocket and wiped away her tears. With the start, I realized she'd been crying for some time. I had no idea what to say, so I sat and waited for her to continue. You prefer to think things over all by yourself, and you don't like people looking inside your head. Maybe that's because you're an only child. You're used to thinking and acting alone. You figure that as long as you understand something, that's enough. She shook her head. And that makes me afraid. I feel abandoned. Only child. I hadn't heard those words in a long while. In elementary school, the words had hurt me. But Izumi was using them in a different sense. Her only child didn't mean a pampered, spoiled kid, but spoke to my isolated ego, which kept the world at arm's length. She wasn't blaming me. The situation just made her very sad. I can't tell you how happy I was when we held each other. It gave me hope, and I thought, who knows, maybe everything will work out, she said, as we said goodbye. But life isn't that easy, is it? On the way back from the station, I mulled over what she'd said. It made sense. I wasn't used to opening up to others. She was opening up to me, but I couldn't do the same. I really did like her, yet still something held me back. I'd walked home from the station 1,000 times, but now it was like a foreign town. I couldn't shake off the image of Izumi's naked body, her taut nipples, her wisp of pubic hair, her soft thighs. And eventually I couldn't stand it any longer. I bought some cigarettes from a vending machine, went back to the park, where we talked, and lit a cigarette to calm down. If only my aunt hadn't barged in on us, things might have worked out better. If nothing had disturbed us, we could have had a pleasanter goodbye. We would have been even happier. But even if my aunt hadn't arrived, someday something similar was bound to happen. If not today, then tomorrow. The biggest problem was I couldn't convince her this was inevitable, because I couldn't convince myself. As the sun set, the wind grew cold. Winter was fast approaching, and when the new year came, there would be entrance exams and the beginning of a brand new life. Uneasy though I was, I yearned for change. My heart and body both craved this unknown land, a blast of fresh air. That was the year Japanese universities were taken over by their students, and Tokyo was engulfed in a storm of demonstrations. The world was transforming itself before my eyes, and I was dying to catch that fever. Even if Izumi wanted me to stay, and would have sex with me to ensure that, I knew my days in this sleepy town were numbered. If that meant the end of our relationship, so be it. If I stayed here, something inside me would be lost forever. Something I couldn't afford to lose. It was like a vague dream, a burning, unfulfilled desire. The kind of dream people have only when they're 17. Izumi could never understand my dream. She had her own dreams, a vision of a far different place, a world unlike my own. But even before my new life began, a crisis came to rip our relationship to shreds. End of chapter 3.